I'd like to thank you for joining us in our study in the book of 2 Corinthians. Today we move on. We are moving on from the Apostle Paul's teaching about the relationships between the servant of God and the people that he's serving or she's serving. Today we're going to begin talking about another touchy subject, offerings. Let's take a look at what the Apostle Paul wrote to the Corinthian church. Chapter 8, verse number 1. Now, brethren, what's he doing? He's saying, hey, we're making a change here. We're changing the subject. Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God which has been given in the churches of Macedonia. Now, notice the way that the Apostle Paul approaches this offering. He's saying, you know what? I want to make known to you not how much the churches of Macedonia brought in. He says, I want to make known to you the grace of God, which has been given in the churches of Macedonia. We need to understand that offerings need to be taken in the grace of God. Now, what is the grace of God? Now, people would say, well, grace is unmerited favor. And you know what? That's absolutely right. But that's a very limited definition. Grace, the grace of God is unmerited favor, but the grace of God, that unmerited favor, produces something in your life. It produces in your life the ability to change, the ability to give in this context. You see, the Apostle Paul told these Corinthians something very important at the very beginning of him taking an offering. This is done in the grace of God. And we're going to find out later on what all that means. But I want you to understand the Apostle Paul is telling them this is done in the unmerited favor of God, in the grace of God. And then he goes on, which has been given to the churches in Macedonia. Now, what's he talking about? Well, if we had a map, you would know that Macedonia was a region that was north of Corinth, kind of north and a little bit east of Corinth. Macedonia was a region. It included the churches of Thessalonica and Philippi and Caesarea. Anyway, it included several churches in that area, not Caesarea, but understand he's talking about a region that was experiencing the grace of God, and they were experiencing the grace of God in the ability to take an offering. And now he goes on and he says this, that in great ordeal of affliction. What's the Apostle Paul talking about? He says a great ordeal of affliction. Now, the word affliction means to be placed under pressure. In that area of the country, they have come under persecution from the very beginning. In fact, the Apostle Paul fled the city of Thessalonica because of persecution, because people were wanting to kill him. Now, these were religious people. They were Judaizers, plus they were those that were worshiping false gods, and they wanted to kill the Apostle Paul. So he fled Thessalonica. He left Timothy behind and said, hey, Timothy, take care of this for me, will you? But notice what he says. He says that in great ordeal, not only was there persecution from religious people, but now in the area of Macedonia, the Roman government has now said, you know what, we don't like Christians. We're persecuting Christians. We're putting Christians to death. And so when the Apostle Paul writes here and he says a great ordeal of affliction, he's talking about the persecution of the churches in Macedonia. But notice what happens, that in great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy. What do they have in the great ordeal of affliction? Of affliction, what do they have? They have an abundance of joy. The word abundance means overflowing. They have overflowing joy. Let me say this, that when the grace of God comes into your life, you know what you experience? One of the things you experience is an abundance of joy. Why? Because you realize it's not my doing. It's not me having to do this. It's the grace of God given to me that changes me. And it gives me the ability to serve God. I rest in the grace of God. Before we do these podcasts, we pray that the grace of God will come and strengthen us and give us the words to say to you. You see, in the grace of God, you will find, even in the middle of great affliction, you will find an abundance of joy. And then notice what he says, and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. Their deep poverty. These people were extremely, extremely poor. In fact, if you were to take a look at Macedonia and do it in comparison to the city of Corinth, Macedonia would be the slums. It would be the most impoverished area. Impoverished because of, a lot of people say, well, the trade routes changed and there was no need for commerce anymore. And you can give all kinds of reasons. But the area of Macedonia was very, very impoverished. The city of Corinth was just the opposite, was extremely wealthy, had all kinds of trades. The city of Corinth was also known as the vacation spot for the Roman army. Oh, let's go on vacation. Let's go to Corinth. We can sin all we want. There's all kinds of idols. Let's go to Corinth. And it was extremely wealthy. But Paul here is writing, and he's saying that the grace of God has done this, that in their deep poverty, and the word deep means extremely deep, they were extremely poor. They overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. Now notice he didn't say they overflowed with money. That would be a foolish statement to make. But what did they overflow in? They overflowed in the wealth of their liberality, in the great value of their liberality. In other words, they gave with such liberty. They gave out of their own needs. They gave. What's Paul saying to the Corinthians? He's saying, you know what, if you get into a place of great affliction, you can have great joy. If you get into a place where you have deep poverty, you can still overflow with liberality. Now, how does those two things happen? They happen because of the grace of God. So realize, as we bring this podcast to a close, realize that the taking of the offering starts with the grace of God. Now, we're going to continue tomorrow in looking at this offering. So join us as we study through the book of 2 Corinthians. Thank you for watching.